Welcome again to our July meeting, our July monthly meeting, and we're glad that you're here. Let's get into the meat of tonight's call. I am honored to introduce you to Christina Krost, Faith in Place's Policy Senior Coordinator. Christina joined Faith in Place in March of 2015 to organize houses of worship around smart energy programs in Central and Southern Illinois. And now she has risen to be our policy senior coordinator. I had the pleasure of being in Washington, D.C., my first lobbying visit with Christina and learning from her as we engage different elected officials in Illinois there in D.C. And so I am glad to bring to you this evening Christina Krost, who will introduce you to our new staff and our policy team. Christina.
Good evening. Thank you, Pastor Veronica. And I want to take a quick moment before we get started this evening to introduce some of our new folks on our policy team. As Reverend Sauter mentioned, we are growing, and that's exciting, and taking over the Midwest one state at a time. So if we could get Christine to just say a few words. She started Monday, y'all. So we're going to let Christine say hi and then let Christine observe and chill and see what it is that we do this evening. So Christine, could you say just a word of welcome?
Yes, I'm very excited to be here and to work with you all as we go along to make changes here in Indiana. And that's all I'm going to say. I just started.
Yes. And thank you so much. It's a big ask to say to introduce yourselves to so many folks in your first week. So thank you for joining us tonight, Christine. And I wanted to take another minute to introduce Alexander, who has come to us in Wisconsin. Alexander's been here. He's a veteran now. You've been here, what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? So Alexander, can you take a minute and say hello and tell us about what's happening August 9th in Wisconsin?
Yeah, hey everybody, welcome to the call tonight. It's a pleasure to be here and introduce myself. My name is Alexander Melko, and I'm the Wisconsin Policy Coordinator here at Faith in Place. It's important to note on August 9th will be the partisan primary election, and notably as well, after yesterday, voters will have to register in person or at their polling place or municipal clerk's office, according to the Wisconsin Election Commission. So if you missed that, you'd have to register in person after yesterday's deadline. So we're encouraging everyone to get out to vote. And I believe there will be a document, How to Vote in Wisconsin, that was placed in the chat from Katie. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and really looking forward to getting things moving here in Wisconsin. So thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Alexander. And please, if you are from Wisconsin or know someone or love someone from Wisconsin, please encourage them to get out and register to vote. All right, let's
Awesome.
go.
Thank you, thank you. And so now I have the pleasure of interviewing Christina so we can learn more about our policy team and the work that they are doing for all of us. And so first, Christina, can you tell us why advocacy by people of faith is important?
Yes, I think that's a really central question right now. So I think many, as we've referenced already this evening, have felt, despair, disappointment. Maybe you're outright freaking out about some of the Supreme Court decisions that have come down in the last few weeks. And it really seems to be a theme that we are kicking decision-making power to the states, for better or for worse, which makes it really hard for the federal government to set some basic standards, but it also sets up a little bit more power that the states have, perhaps, to do really important policy things. And so I think as people of faith who pay attention to these matters, we need to recognize that we've never had a more powerful voice than now, and we need to use it. So it's really hard to stay up to date on everything that's happening, in the news and staying sane. I know that weighs on me. I'm also a mother. I have kids, and they're in activities, and they worry about what we're inheriting. And so all of that, holding that all at once can be really overwhelming. And that is where, people of faith, I think, have an opportunity. We take a long view of these things. And yes, some of us may freak out temporarily when we see bad news, but again, we take the long view of putting one foot in front of the other, gathering people around us to do the work together. That's what makes us different, I think, from other constituencies. But it also means, we need to be acting. We need to be, paying attention to the news and voting. We need to be paying attention to the news and engaging with our elected officials. We need to be paying attention to what's going on and gathering our communities around us and educating them too and bringing them along with us. And so, our faith leads us to action. It leads us out of despair and into doing something about it.
Awesome, thank you. So when we think about the myriad of issues that are going on right now, what would you say are issues that need our immediate attention?
So there's two things right now that I think people of faith, certainly in Illinois, but also in Indiana and Wisconsin, can get involved in right now. The first is more local. It is kind of specific to Illinois, although it also touches Indiana and Wisconsin in a slightly different way than it's affecting in Illinois. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But in Illinois right now, we have an issue with one of our investor-owned utilities, Ameren, and our grid operator, which is MISO, which stands for the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. So Ameren is what's called a wires-only utility. They do not generate their electricity, they purchase it from the capacity market. And it's worth noting that MISO operates in Wisconsin, it operates in Indiana, as well as Illinois, which making advocacy with MISO not just an Illinois issue, but definitely a Midwestern issue. And MISO covers like 17 or something like that other states. So has quite a large reach. So back in the spring, the capacity market happened. Ameren went to buy energy for the upcoming summer and found that, wow, those prices really went up. That's for a number of reasons. Volatility in the market, Russian aggression in Ukraine, just general price hikes in general. And so Ameren, of course, being a wires-only utility, passes that increase along to consumers. When prices go up, they pass that to the consumers. That's, how it works, right? Don't worry, they're still making a profit, but they're passing some of that increase along to those who are Ameren customers. All the while, ComEd customers who are on a different grid with a different grid operator, that's the PJM grid, were getting credits and rebates in their bills because they received money from a carbon mitigation fund that was set up by what we call CEJA, or the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, that was passed back in September of 2021. So ComEd's getting money back. Ameren is, some people's bills are going up, they're doubling right now. And there's a lot of reasons why there's a ton of difference in what you're seeing in your energy bill right now. To their credit, Ameren is making money available to those that are struggling to pay their utility bills. They're offering to put them on payment plans, spread that out over time, and really help those who are having to make some really tough decisions about their family budgets right now. However, not everyone's going to be able to access that help. And, many folks, quite honestly, will be making decisions between, can I buy my medication? Can I buy groceries for my family? And can I afford to keep my house cool in the midst of the hottest summer on record? And so the solution to this problem is advocacy. We need more cheap and renewable energy now more than ever. And we need more states that have policies like the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act right now. We also learned that there are enough solar and wind projects that have been built but not connected to the grid that could power 4.5 million homes. That's like the entire Ameren service area could power 4.5 million homes, but those projects are not connected to the grid yet because there's not enough capacity, on the transmission lines right now. So we are collecting petitions that will be delivered to Ameren soon, sometime in September, to ask for relief for consumers, to ask for improvements to the grid, to advocate for those things to happen, to get these solar and wind projects up and running so that we can have more cheap, clean, affordable energy in our homes. So that's at the state level. There are things also happening at the federal level that we can also pay attention to. And again, this can be for everyone from Indiana to Wisconsin and beyond. So there's many of you remember the Build Back Better plan that has changed and moved around into what's now the reconciliation bill. That passed the House a few months ago, but it is stuck in the Senate. You may have heard about this, especially very recently in the news. So one senator is holding the whole thing up. This particular senator gets millions of dollars of coal in his campaign, and his family has benefited from that. And so voting is very important here. I think this is a very good illustration of why. And, we need to hold our elected officials accountable. So we have a petition that will go to our senators asking for the strongest possible climate provisions in the budget reconciliation package that's before the Senate right now, which is about $555 billion of a variety of things. But there are climate provisions there, and they need to be as strong as possible. Again, this is a place where federally setting some standards is allowable, but it's not the same thing as what happened with like the EPA versus West Virginia decision. So this is a place where we really need the federal government to take some leadership. So again, clean energy is cheap energy. So transitioning as fast as we can to that will bring people's bills down. We'll fight inflation. And those are things I think a lot of us are thinking a lot about right now as well. So climate pollution doesn't stop at state lines. And so, we need everybody fighting for these kinds of things at the federal level to protect our communities and the earth as well.
Awesome, thank you. And just want to say, we see questions in the chat. We will respond to your questions. But one more question for Christina. So, what you just shared, that's reachable, right? We can grasp that and we can act by signing the petition. So sometimes issues seem a bit above our heads. We don't have time to get into the weeds of it. What can we do when it seems like these matters are more complex than we really have time to explore?
Right. And that's, I come to this work as a former elementary school teacher. I did not go to school for environmental policy. So what I know about policy, I have taught myself. Now, not everybody wants to be on the internet as much as I'm on the internet learning about these things, but we can educate ourselves, but we can lean on one another. We can lean on resources like Faith in Place to do that. My number one tip at this point right now, when things get above our heads and we don't quite know what to do, is get real small. Get really involved in your community, because that is who's going to have your back when disaster strikes. And I think we've seen climate disasters happen. My own house was nearly hit by a tornado in December, which is not something that we had on the bingo card for this, December time. Community involvement leads to resilience, and it leads to, actual action in our communities. And so we also, though, are launching a presentation that our Green Team coaches can bring to your Green Team and to your house of worship that helps to take some of the really big ideas like environmental health and climate change and clean water, really big ideas of our policy platform, down to the local level. So we go through a number of slides and we talk about, environmental health. What does that even mean? Well, it means, do you live in an EJ community? Do you know what EJ means? How would you even find out if you lived in an EJ community? What are the sources of pollution in your community? How would you find out if you don't actually know? Takes you through climate change. What happens in your community when it gets too hot? What happens in your community when it rains too much? What happens when there's a storm and you've got power lines out? So asking yourselves, at a very community, local level, what does this mean to you? It talks about clean water. So what happens again when it rains too much? How does that impact your water system? Or do you know if your community has lead service lines? Illinois has, especially Chicago has the most in the nation. How would you find that out? Economic justice is another topic, we talk about, but we don't necessarily know what that means in our community. Well, here's a couple questions that might lead you to some better understanding. How do people make a living in your community? How many people in your community rent their homes versus own their homes in your community? Sometimes that can set up some situations that, are less than ideal. Food access. You can ask yourself, where is the nearest grocery store in my community? That might be a tougher question than you realize, especially in rural communities. What percentage of students in your community qualify for free or reduced lunch? That kind of goes hand in hand with economic justice, but it also is a food access issue. And then we talk about voting rights, again, bringing that down to the local level. That's Honey, say hi. Do you know where to vote when it is time to vote? Do you know how to get there? Do you know where your precinct is? Do you feel confident when you're reading a ballot and you see a ballot initiative? Do you feel confident about what that is? Do you know where to find information to help you through that? These are all things that we, bringing a really high level idea like, voting rights, that's a big thing, bringing it down to your local level and how it applies to you. So it takes us through these issues, this presentation, how it might apply in our own context. That could be Chicago, that can be Champaign, that could be Wisconsin or Indiana. This applies to everyone. So you should be asking your green team coach to bring this presentation to your house of worship or to your green team soon. And that will help you kind of preference, which of these issues are most pressing in my community? Where might I have the most impact? Who could I partner with to have an impact in my community? So that's a new resource, and we're hoping that it'll be useful to you in your communities.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so what I hope you heard is that we have a resource that will help you really come to a greater understanding of some really large policy issues, and your green team coaches can bring that to you, to your house of worship, to your green team, and even beyond. And so please request that of your green team coach, and they may offer it as well. We look forward to offering that to you. With that, thank you, Christina. We would love to open up for Q&A. If you have any questions, first I'm going to ask Katie if there are any questions in the chat that we need to address.
I think we addressed them, but in case you missed that in the chat, one question was, do you have to be in the Ameren area to sign the petition we talked about?
Excellent question, and no, not at all. I think it shows solidarity when our friends far and wide want to make sure that our utility is being held accountable and that our grid operator is being held accountable. So no, not at all.
We also had someone asking, can we get those petitions to take to our houses of worship?
Yes, ma'am. They are all located on our website, on the Action Fund website. I believe those links are in the chat as well to those petitions. Please share with your green teams. Your green team coaches may already be sharing them with you, or may shortly after this call be sharing them with you. But feel free to look those up and share away.
Great. Anyone else have any questions for Christina or for Alexander or Christine? They're policy folks, just getting started with us, but may be able to field a question or two. Any questions? Feel free to unmute. I'm trying to get my full gallery open so I can see if there's any hands. Anyone? Okay. No questions? Okay. Well, thank you again, Christina, Alexander, and Christine. Did I miss a question?
We just got one in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Will your presentation include local disaster planning?
Good question.
That is such an important question. And I think this is something that's becoming near and dear to my heart. And I'm just trying to figure out what exactly I can do with it. Our houses of worship are heated and cooled 24/7 pretty much. could we be looking at our houses of worship as community resilience centers? Could we be looking at them, you know, very basically as a place where you could go cool off when it's hot, or get warm when it's cold? There are ways that we can be using our houses of worship, I think, as resources. That's going to take a lot more coordination than we currently have, but I don't think anyone in this room is scared of a little bit of hard work, right? So there are denominations that have local disaster planning. I happen to be United Methodist. United Methodists have disaster planning at the conference level, and so they do some of that. You might check with your denomination to see what kind of local disaster planning you might have. But that is something we probably need to include on those slides about, you know, considering getting involved in local disaster planning, either with your denomination or with your community. I think that's a really good flag, and I'm going to add that to my list.
Awesome. And then I see a hand up, Bob and Becky. Do you have a question?
Unmute. Okay. Christina, thank you. That's very clear. I appreciate your presentation on this. Can you explain a little bit more why or what the delay is? And you're saying that we don't have enough transmission capacity to get the renewables out of there. What is the delay on that? And is it just a matter of building it, or is there some red tape that's messing things up for us? It seems like they would have been building it along with the renewable fields. I'm seeing solar fields north of Springfield, Illinois. A lot of wind generation has been put in recently. So, but a lot of it's not even turning. So that probably explains some of that.
Excellent question. Yes, you would have expected that they would have been building out this infrastructure as we build out the solar and wind, right? Seems like they would have been doing that. You would have guessed wrong. So MISO, the grid operator, has plans to be doing this work. There's a batch of transmission called Tranche 1 that they will be meeting actually on Monday to talk about whether they're going to approve the building of this or not. They've been getting quite a bit of pressure from lawmakers, from various states, you know, from various organizations to say, you need to be building this infrastructure 10 years ago, but start now. And so there are very clear plans of what they need to be building. It's still going to take time. So even if they approve it tomorrow, we're still a few years out from when things will be 100% up to capacity. But due to a lot of the advocacy we've already done, you know, even though this board meeting was, you know, on the books, I think they're maybe fast tracking some of these things a little faster than they had planned to, because they're getting a lot of advocacy on it.
And is there anything we should be doing to help increase the pressure?
Ameren petition delivery will be in September, getting those petitions signed. It would be great if we could show up with a few thousand petitions.
Speaking of petitions, we had a question in the chat from someone saying, any idea what is the relative impact between writing one's own representatives oneself versus signing group petitions?
Excellent question. I think it becomes a both and situation. So I would sign a petition that goes to a large petition delivery like the one that we're collecting for right now. And then I would also pick up a pen and paper and send that very same wording to my local representative, and make sure that that local representative knows, you know, that I'm paying attention to this issue as well. I would say both and is probably the way to go there.
Awesome. And I see one more question in the chat. What other organizations is Faith in Place working with?
You're right. Citizens Climate Lobby is sometimes involved. Sierra Club is almost always involved. Anyone who's participating in the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition is usually part of our resources. I'm trying to think directly who's collecting for the Ameren petition. Definitely Sierra Club, Prairie Rivers Network are usually the folks involved, and of course Faith in Place. So yep, the usual people.
I see another one.
Okay, one more question. So Actual building of transmission lines can be very complicated. That's true. Landowners might not wish to sell land or an easement. Is that the kind of thing that gets involved? You know, that's a good question. I'm not sure if that's entirely what the issue is here, or if it was just they haven't built it because they haven't had the funds or the approvals to do so. I am not entirely sure why that is, but again, 4.5 million customers are waiting for the energy that's coming from the solar and the wind projects that have been built but not added to the grid. So it's kind of it's a failure of our grid operator to get that up and running. Just connecting it onto the transmission lines like melts the lines, and then we've got, you know, a major problem on our hands. So there is a you know, systemic way that they have to do that planning, and I'm sure that that planning has been done. It's just not been completed. So Thomas, that's a really good question, and I wish I knew more about that. I think it's probably time for us to go on to the next thing.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Christina. Can you all help me show appreciation to Christina and to our whole policy team? Please stay tuned with Faith in Place. As our policy team grows, we have more and more information to share with you in the 3 states, and we look forward to doing so. With that, join us. And we're going to break into our breakout rooms in a moment, and you'll have a little bit of time with your Green Team coach. But before we do that, please mark your calendars for our next monthly meeting, which will be August 18th. Registration will be in the chat if it's not already. And of course, you will receive that in email as well. But feel free to keep staying with us each month. We'll have more and more to share with you. And we look forward to seeing you in August. With that, I will turn it over to Cindy, who will move us to the final part of our meeting. Cindy? You're muted.
The last part of our meeting is our breakout rooms, and I want to encourage you, please, to stay tuned for that. This is not only a time to get information from folks that have been reading up on things, but also a time for us to make connections with one another in our regional groups and to build our power as we do that. So please join us in our breakout rooms with your regional outreach and policy folks. We have the prompts that will guide our discussion, and we will have a chance to get together. I hope that you will also consider, while you're talking with your coaches and staff from Faith in Place, that you'll consider asking them about setting up that policy presentation at your house of worship and in your community. So thank you all. I'll see you at the breakout rooms.